Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the formal opening of the first working session of the Citizens' Assembly on Advancing Gender Equality. I'd like to welcome our observers and members of the media and everybody who's following us through the live stream on the web. You're all very welcome to follow our proceedings. All of our public sessions are going to be live streamed so that you can follow in real time the work of this Assembly, and anyone who is interested can have all the information on the presentations and the texts on the Citizens' Assembly website. Today, we've planned our work around the part of the Oireachtas resolution that invites us to bring forward proposals, and I'm going to quote from the resolution, proposals that challenge the remaining barriers and social norms and attitudes that facilitate gender discrimination towards girls and boys, women and men. To provide us with the necessary factual information to make sure that we can have informed discussion among ourselves, we're first going to hear a presentation from Elaine O'Mahony of the Central Statistics Office, and Elaine is going to speak on gender in Ireland, some key facts. Following Elaine's presentation, we will have a break for coffee, and then we'll go into private session in roundtables until 12 o'clock. So I look forward now very much to hearing Elaine's very interesting presentation, and I'd ask you to welcome Elaine from the Central Statistics Office. Thank you.
So good morning and welcome to you all. My name is Elaine O'Mahony and I work in the Communications Department of the Central Statistics Office. Oops, I'm on the wrong slide there. Sorry about that. So, who are the Central Statistics Office? Well, we are the national statistical agency responsible for gathering the facts around Ireland's economy and society. Now, we're an independent body, and our job is to provide the country with high quality and trustworthy information so that we, as a country, can make better decisions for us all. Now, our data comes from a number of different places. We conduct surveys with householders and businesses. We also conduct a census every 5 years, and I'm sure you're all familiar with our census. And we also use data or information that's already available to produce statistics that are important to society. Now, one of the areas that we've produced statistics on is around gender in Ireland. Now, this morning, you should have received a copy of our Women and Men in Ireland statistical publication, which includes many different topics on aspects of gender in Ireland. Now, there's an awful lot of in-depth information in that report. So today I'm going to walk you through some of the interesting findings on gender that are relevant to your work as part of the Citizens' Assembly. And those topics are paid work, home, family life and caring for others, education, and politics and public life. Now, before I start, I want to let you know that I've brought some of my colleagues who are statisticians from the Central Statistics Office with me here today, and they are Kieran Culhane, Helen Cahill, Emma Hogan and Ivo Regan. And they'll be able to talk to you later this morning if you've got specific questions around this presentation or even around the publication in front of you there today. So let's start with the first topic, paid work. So what do we know about, at a high level, about paid work in Ireland? Well, we know that employment rates are higher for men. We also know that the labour force participation rate, which I'll explain to you in a moment, is also higher for men. And we know that men work longer hours and they also earn more. So now let's delve into the data. Now, this interesting chart shows employment rates for men and women in Ireland and in the EU between 2009 and 2019. So looking first at the rates in Ireland, we can see that employment rates dropped during the recession but have since recovered. The rate for men, which is the solid green line on the chart, dropped from about 69% in 2009 to about 63% in 2012, before rising to about 75% in 2019. The employment rate for women in Ireland, and that's the solid purple line on the chart, followed a very similar pattern, dropping from about 59% in 2009 to about 56% in 2012, before rising to nearly 64% in 2019. Now, what's really clear, though, is that there's a definite gender gap in employment rates for men and women. In 2019, the employment rate for men was nearly 11 percentage points higher than the rate for women. And what's also interesting about this graph is that employment rates for men and women in Ireland are very similar to the average EU rates. Now, this slide looks at the participation rate in the labour force for men and women by age. Now, the labour force, which I'm sure you're all aware, is all of those who are employed or unemployed. And the participation rate then is the number of people in the labour force as a percentage of total population aged 15 or over. So apart from the youngest people aged under 20, all the age groups show higher labour force participation rates for men. And again, men are in green on the chart, while women are in purple. Now, the difference is small for those aged 20 to 24. It's only about 3 percentage points. But there is a gap of about 12 percentage points for men and women aged between 25 to 34 and 35 to 44. The gender gap widens to about 16 percentage points for those aged 45 to 54 and about 19 percentage points for those aged 55 to 59. Now, what we're likely to be seeing here is the effect of having children on the working patterns of women. Now, this next slide looks at hours worked by gender. So you can see the number of hours worked along the x-axis and the percentage of men and women along the y-axis. You can see from the graph that men work longer hours than women in paid employment. Again, you can see men in green and women are in purple on the chart there. And we can see that about 22% of men and only about 6% of women worked 45 hours a week or more. About 31% of men and 18% of women worked between 40 to 44 hours a week. At the other end of the chart, we can see that about 6% of men and 18% of women worked for 20 to 29 hours a week. Now, on this next slide, we can see data for the gender pay gap in Ireland and the EU. Now, the gender pay gap is the difference between male and female gross hourly earnings as a percentage of average male gross hourly earnings. Now, we can see that the gender pay gap for Ireland, in colour green, has risen slightly over the last 3 years, from 13.9% in 2015 to 14.4% in 2017. However, in all the years shown, the gender pay gap in Ireland has been lower than the average for the EU. Now, this interesting slide shows gender segregation in some occupations. From the chart, we can clearly see that trades and IT and computing, most workers are men, and that's the solid green line on the chart. On the other hand, in primary teaching, nursing and retail, most workers are women, and they're represented by the purple on the chart. In the middle, we can see that professional occupations such as accountancy, law and medicine are close to equal. So this slide shows the median or middle value for earned income for certain selected occupations. We can see that in all these occupations, the median earned income for men is higher. Now, we've pulled out certain selected tables here on the slide, but if you look at the detailed handout in your, the white handout or supplementary tables, on the very back page, you'll see table 4.15. It's a very, very back page on the actual document there. It's on the back cover, actually. And you can see that across all of these occupations as well, the earned income for men is higher as well. In fact, the median earned income for men is higher across virtually all of the 350 different occupations that the CSO collects data for. Now, for people in primary and nursery education and in secondary education, the median earned incomes for men and women are quite close, but the male income is still higher. In the other occupations shown, male income is noticeably higher. For example, I think accountants is a good example, which has an equal number of male and females at work. And the median earned income for men is about €52,000, while the median earned income for women is €10,000 less at about €42,000. Now, just to say, one important caveat to bear in mind with these median incomes is that it takes no account of hours worked. So next, let's explore the topic of home, family, and caring for others. So what does the data tell us at a high level? Well, we know that most of those looking after the home and family are women, but the number of men is rising, and we know that most lone parents are women. So again, let's delve into the data. Now, this slide shows the numbers of men and women at work and looking after the home or family in 2009, and that's red in the chart, and 2019, which is blue in the chart. Now, what's interesting on the slide is that the number of women looking after the home or family fell significantly between 2009 and 2019, dropping from 527,000 to about 330,000. Although the numbers of men looking after the home and family are very low, the number increased strongly between 2009 and 2019. In fact, it nearly trebled, rising from 7,000 to 20,000. Now, this slide shows the number of lone parents and also the at-risk of poverty rate for lone parents. So a lone parent is defined as persons living as lone parents with at least one child less than 20 years of age. Now, from the left-hand chart, we can see that most lone parents are women, and there are about 143,100 women who are lone parents, compared to about 24,000 men. Now, on the right of the chart, you can see the at-risk of poverty rate of lone parents. So you can see the rate for Ireland is in green in the chart, and the rate for the EU is in blue. Now, we can see that while the at-risk of poverty rate increased for lone parents between 2012 and 2016, it has since reduced to 36.3%, which is just above the EU average rate of 35.3% in 2018. So now let's move on to the topic of education. So what do we know at a high level about education, statistics and gender? Well, we know that women are more likely to have a third level education, and men have higher earned incomes across all levels of education. So looking closely at the data then, this slide shows the percentage of men and women by level of their education. We can see that women are more likely to have a third level education. In 2018, about 47% of women had third level education compared to about 39% of men. Men are more likely not to have a higher secondary level education or above. The highest education level for about 16% of men was lower secondary compared to about 10% of women. So this interesting slide shows the median, again, or middle value for earned income for people at work by level of their education. We can see that for all levels of education, men have a higher median earned income than women. For example, men with upper secondary education had a median earned income of 23,300 compared to about 17,000 euros for women. Men with an honours degree had a median earned income of about 44,500 euros compared to 34,300 euros for women. But again, an important caveat to bear in mind here is that median incomes don't take account of hours worked. So obviously, if somebody works more hours, they can earn more. So next, politics and public life. So what do we know at a high level here? Well, we know that women are underrepresented in national decision making. Now, this topical slide shows the proportions of TDs who are female in the last 3 general elections. The gender quotas, which were introduced before the 2016 general election, mean that at least 30% of candidates in a political party must be female, and also at least 30% must be male. So we can see on the slide that the introduction of the gender quotas resulted in an increase in the proportion of female TDs from 15.1% in 2011 to 22.2% in 2016. However, in the 2020 election held last week, there's been very little change. Just 22.5% of TDs are now female. Now, this slide shows the proportions of men and women in some national decision-making groups. We can see that in all these groups, more than half are women. So in 2018, about 16% of ministers of state were female, while about 27% of government ministers were female. In the Seanad, 30% of senators were female, while about 41% of people on state boards were female. Now, this last slide looks at the Gender Equality Index. Now, this is a unique measurement tool produced by the European Institute for Gender Equality for each country in the EU. Now, it's formed by combining gender indicators into a single summary measure, and it assigns a score to member states between 1, which is total inequality, and 100, which would be full equality. Now, the Gender Index has 6 core domains of work, money, knowledge, time, power, and health. In 2017, the Gender Equality Index for Ireland was 71.3 points, and this ranked Ireland as 7th highest in the EU, and 3.9 points higher than the average EU score. So that concludes a very short presentation on some of the interesting statistics around gender in Ireland. Now, I'd imagine you have a lot of questions around this presentation, and you probably have ones around gender statistics that you've thought of in advance yourself. So I know there'll be a questions and answers session, and my statistician colleagues will be here to answer those for you. And we'd also like to say, if you've questions arising after this session or in subsequent sessions, you can feed them back to us, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. So in the meantime, I'd just like to say thank you so much for your attention this morning. Okay?
Thank you very much, Elaine. That was fascinating information in a very short space of time. And certainly I learned something about the different proportions. If I'd had to guess what the numbers were, I wouldn't have guessed what you've shown us. So it's great to have the objective, factually checked information. And I think if you take away the booklet, you'll also find it interesting to delve into. And I've no doubt that we'll be referring throughout our discussions to wanting to have the right statistics and the right figures. So you've given us a very good start. Thank you very much. That now concludes the live streamed part of this session. We're going to now take a coffee break. And I'm going to ask you to be back at 11 at your round tables. We've gained a few minutes extra for the round table discussion, which will be very welcome. I think you've heard me talk a lot, and you've heard a very interesting presentation now from Elaine, so I'm sure you're dying to start discussing among yourselves. So take a quick break, and if you can come back at 11. And then the live stream will resume again at 12:10. Thank you. That was great. Thank you very much. Yeah.